Alright everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Emphatically Pneumatic YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to harvest cacao and actually get your own cocoa nibs and potentially work on to processing your own chocolate. So basically the pods grow up in the tree and they're these big yellow drupes that kind of look like the leaves themselves. They're a little bit difficult to get off, so you can't always use a fruit picker like you would with avocado or apples or any of that. Sometimes it's best to just have a tree saw actually and to try and cut the drupes at the root. But basically we will show you the pods themselves, and they're pretty crazy looking, but from there we'll show you how to open them up and begin processing the cocoa nibs. So just wanted to show you the leaves real quick. They're these giant kind of elephant ear looking leaves, one ridge down the middle and then a couple veins coming out from the side, and they don't run parallel. So if you see one of these, you might not immediately recognize it, but basically you want to look for the pods up in the tree, and there are a couple different varieties. The kind we have, they grow yellow pods. So we're going to go ahead and get processing it and see about making our own cacao powder. Believe it or not, this is what the cacao pods come from. It's also why you want to be really careful to not damage the branches when you're picking the pod, because after you pick it, a new flower will sprout from the same location. So it's very important to be careful, but also just wanted to show you this because it's a little bit surprising that such a large pod could come from such a tiny flower here. Just to give you some reference, very, very small. Alright, so we got 9 total cacao pods today. Basically what we're going to do from here is actually crack them with a hammer and take the nibs from the inside. Don't mind our chickens here. They are hungry. It's about dinner time. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and crack these open. This is what they will look like here, and we'll show you the inside of what the delicious nibs look like. Alright, so basically from here, what I'm gonna do is crack open the cocoa pod with a hammer. Just put it on a hard surface here and give it a good whack. When you pull it out, these are your nibs here. So all these white bunches are actually what we're going to process, and the process is just fermenting it and then drying them out. From here, I'm just gonna put these nibs into our tiny. Put these nibs into our bowl and prepare to start processing it. So this is what our end result looks like here after cracking open the cacao pods. We have a couple cupfuls of beans. We discarded all of the extra stuff, like these here, and basically from here the pith needs to ferment. So all of this white stuff that's covering the beans here is going to ferment. Most people here in Hawaii use banana leaves. They poke a number of holes in the leaves and then put them in wooden boxes. And there's actually a yeast on the underside of the leaf that helps the fermentation process. We actually, unfortunately, don't have banana leaves growing here, so what we're going to do is take a mason jar, put it in a colander, and put it in the oven. It needs to have a warm environment for fermentation, and it needs to sit that way for about 5 to 8 days. and you can put a yeast powder into the batch to help the fermentation process. But basically what we're looking for is to avoid germination. That will make the nibs taste very bitter and probably kind of gross. So from here we're going to put it inside of the oven after we put it in the mason jar, and let them sit that way with the pilot light on for about a week or so. Alright, so we ended up having 2 mason jars full of the cacao beans here, and basically what we're going to do now is set them upside down in this colander and then put them inside of the oven. So you usually need like a temperature range of 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't know what that is in Celsius, so I'm sorry for the international viewers, but we don't have any yeast powder either, so we're going to hope that there's enough yeast in the air to actually affect the process and get the fermentation going. And like I said, we'll leave it in there for about a week or so. It'll start to smell a little bit like alcohol, and after that we'll have the drying process, which is actually when you start to notice it's smelling like brownies, interestingly enough. So these are going to turn brown, and they'll start to look a little bit more like chocolate during the fermentation process. I think that most chocolatiers would probably be horrified that we're doing it this way, but we're going to do it in a very strange way. But fermentation is, after all, the most important thing that you can do when making your own chocolate or cacao powder. Okay, so basically from here, we're going to put them upside down in the colander. There is a bit of liquid at the bottom, so we're doing it in the sink. And then once they're upside down, we're going to take the colander and put it in the oven. So real quick, just drop it in here. It should be good. And then we'll open the oven. We got our trays ready so that they can drip onto the trays. And from here, we're just going to leave them for about a week or so. And the pilot light will help dry them. It will also speed up the fermentation process, and hopefully by doing it in this really odd way, we will successfully have fermented cocoa beans and we can get our way onto the nib. So we've had our cocoa beans in the oven for about 2.5 weeks now. Because we're using non-traditional methods, it actually took a lot longer than it should if you do the method of wrapping it in banana leaves. Part of the problem is that we did not have any kind of yeast to activate the fermentation process. So what we did is actually took dried agave and star fruit to put in these mason jars, and dried fruit actually has some yeast on it, so that seemed to help speed up the process. And every day we took out these jars that were upside down in colanders, and we were just keeping it warm with the pilot light inside of the oven. So we take out these jars, we give them a little shake, kind of move around some of the beans in here, and they turned a darker brown. So they're not fully ready. Usually they should have a pretty deep, rich brown color, but we were getting eager to try this out. So what we're going to do now is actually start the process of drying the beans. And there's a couple ways you can do this. The most common are to either put them in the sun, and what you want to do is wrap them in some kind of mesh netting so that bugs and mites and birds can't get in, and you'll dry them in the sun. The method that we're going to take is actually putting them in a food dehydrator. We're going to see how that works, and because we're off grid, we're not really sure how much energy it's going to use up, but we're going to try this to start the initial drying process, and if we find that it would work better out in the sun, we might go with that method instead. So really what we're going to do is just take these jars here and dump them onto the dehydrator, and we'll leave that plugged in for a few days and start the drying process. Let's go from there. Okay, so after leaving the cacao beans in the dehydrator for about an hour, we actually realized that they were drying a little too quick, and this can make your chocolate taste a little too acidic. So instead, we decided to put them out in the sun for about a week or two. Here in Hawaii, it does rain quite a bit, so we had to be careful about bringing them indoors when the rains would start up. But otherwise, they dried out pretty well after those 2 weeks, and they got to a point where we actually felt comfortable roasting them. So to roast them, really all we did was put them in the oven, starting at 350, and every 5 minutes we decreased the temperature 25 degrees until we reached 275, and we let them roast for about 10 minutes at 275. And during the process of roasting, you'll start to smell, kind of smells like brownies, and actually the shells will start to pop inside of the oven. And this lets you know that you're actually ready to crack open the shells. You can pull the shells right off, and you're left with your nibs on the inside, which are these dark brown pieces here. So we're really just going through and deshelling all of these pieces and throwing them in our bowl here. And after that, we will be able to smash the cacao nibs and combine them with sugar and coconut milk and find some sort of delicious recipe to make our own chocolate. So, after deshelling the cocoa nibs, we actually took them and put them inside of the food processor, and we have this beautiful cocoa kind of powder slash butter here. The food processor doesn't blend it up real good. Usually you want a coffee grinder or a mortar and pestle to make actual powder, but we think that this will work out alright, and it actually really smells good. So from here we're going to try it in a few recipes, and okay, so after we had all of our cocoa beans ground up, we found a simple recipe that only took maybe about 4 or 5 ingredients and would be ready within an hour. So this recipe doesn't use any sort of artificial preservatives or hardeners. Basically all we did was took half cup of coconut oil and melted it with a double broiler method, which basically means that you put a saucepan with boiling water over the stove, and then a glass plate over top of that, and in the plate we melted the coconut oil. After that we put in a half cup, sometimes a cup of the ground cocoa, and included a teaspoon of vanilla and 4 tablespoons of honey, also throwing in a pinch of sea salt. And that's really all there is to it. From this step you can add in anything that you like extra, like mint extract, peanut butter. We put in banana chips to one of them. We also did cinnamon and pumpkin spice. And after that, you basically just put it in the freezer for 30 minutes or in the refrigerator for an hour, and your chocolate will harden and you will be able to enjoy it. So I have one of them here that we have tried. This is the peanut butter and banana chip chocolate that we made, and it's a little bit melty here in the Hawaiian heat, but if you keep it in the fridge, it should keep for about a week to 2 weeks, or you can keep it in the freezer and it should stay for a month or 2 months. So really quite incredible, very delicious. It's a little bit like fudge, and going from the cocoa pod to this step is really fulfilling to go through the whole process and make your own chocolate. So that's how you make your own chocolate. Recording?
Yes.
Okay, so after... Wait, I don't know what I'm saying. What should I say?
Chocolate.